Today I'm doing the War of Art, and with this book I'm going to do something different. I might even turn this into a series. Because the book is so thin, and concise, I had the idea that perhaps I shouldn't summarize something which is already, non-fiction to begin with, but also written relatively concisely. And instead I'm going to talk about should you read it. I haven't done one of these in a bit, and in the interest of not ranting, I've put together some notes just to keep me kind of on track. And this book here I actually read a couple years ago, which is why it's a little scuffed. I mean, if you actually can't see any of that on camera. Fair enough. But I read this a couple years ago, and I read it because I saw it on one of Joe Rogan's guests brought it up. Don't remember who. And then I heard it again on the London Real guy, because he was interviewing someone I thought was amusing. And, I heard it twice, heard it was good twice, so I decided to pick it up. And I liked it. And then recently I was feeling a little stuck, felt like I needed perhaps reminding, and I reread it. And I'm gonna kind of do the video in three pieces. I'm gonna talk about what the book is, should you read it, or why should you read it, and what did I get out of reading it. So the thoughts about the book, the purpose of this book I think is really to help people get the most out of their time doing creative work. This guy's a writer, so it kind of comes from his place of getting through writing block, forcing himself to be productive, and he definitely writes from a point of failing repeatedly and figuring it out. So he talks quite a bit about creating an environment that you write well in, and creating a routine that fosters kind of creative insights, inspiration, and being productive. The book centers on an idea that writers are held back by this force, I suppose you could call it, that he calls the resistance. And it's heavily personified in this. That's one of the central themes of the book, is he kind of gives the resistance, as he calls it, a whole personality. And even if it's an aggregate of mental things, circumstantial things, social things, by putting it all together as one force, he then goes in to overcome it to get his work done. And I think it's a very helpful mental thing to do. Even if it's not mechanically correct that all those things are connected, it's still, how would you say, it's still it might be the most useful way to think about it. And amusingly, it kind of reminds me of the war on drugs, the war on terror that the United States engaged in. Because they tried to have war on this abstract concept, which is kind of reminds me of what this guy's doing in this book. And when you're doing it against procrastination and your own laziness or your own fear of being creatively judged, you really can be as vicious as you want. So the whole war, creating an enemy with a personality, is probably a more effective strategy than when you do it with drug addicts. Okay, in terms of the writing style, so he's got this very odd writing style. And he doesn't normally write non-fiction. He normally writes fiction books. At least the other work I read by him, skimmed through it if I'm honest, was a fiction. And that's the writing he's done. And then this book is kind of about how he got the most out of his writing, or how he failed to get the most out of his writing. And it's this odd scattershot. So the book starts with this central theme. It starts about talking about, here's the resistance, here's what it is. I'm not really going to summarize it, because again, you can get through this. Even a relatively slow reader should be able to get through really the whole thing in a day. And even if you get through 3/4 of it, you really get the main idea, because it's stated in the first 20-30 pages, and then it's just kind of weird little offshoots that all further build the central thing. And he kind of circles the main point over and over again. And he very rarely comes back like he did at the start of the book and touches down on the exact main point. But everything he does kind of gives little insights or contextualizes it or would be helpful with the main point. And even then, it's quite concise. It's quite odd. It's like the idea of this book is so simple and quite so little explanation that he can kind of both be scattered and concise at the same time, which I thought was interesting. So I managed to finish this the day I bought it the first time, and then I put it on my bookshelf. Didn't read it for a few years. Broke it back out again recently. And it's not bad to reread because you remember the general idea, but he also introduces a lot of ideas, just not in a lot of detail. It's like, if that helps or that twigs something in you, you can go look it up yourself. So if you flick to like, I don't know, a random page, like this one here is like resistance and healing. And it talks about like people are always trying to like heal up and get well before doing things. And you know, if you watch the UFC or the boxers, you know like every fighter fights injured. Every athlete competes injured. And so he talks about like, sure, try and heal yourself up and all that, but at the end of the day, just unless you're injured in a way that like actually affects your work. Like if you're a writer and you've broken your hand, sure, maybe don't write. But if you're waiting to be like correct before you start, you're not going to start. And this idea is like one of the longer ideas that's explained. It takes this page, the end of this page, and that's it. The next part is resistance and support and looking to support to other people. It's related, but that idea is done. And if you think, oh wow, I do kind of mentally do this. I found with this book, the longest part of reading this book was stopping and thinking and then Googling stuff. Not actually the book itself. Like some sections are this long. A professional accepts no excuses. It is this long and it moves it on. That's it. He just makes the point. There wasn't really any more to say. And the writing style is odd. I noticed that the writer seems to be male. I mean, Steven. But uses female pronouns when referring to an artist. And then, I don't know, that just it really moves around a lot. And there's like very weird examples used sometimes. The author uses like religious language at times, but not really in a way that the book wouldn't be accessible if you're not religious. And they also address like, you can just think of it as, you know, like an evolutionary force. I'm going to think of it in a spiritual sense. And it's not too different if you've like looked at Jordan Peterson's stuff of, you know, making things into symbols and archetypes. This person just takes it a step like further. And I think if they were to try and write this book like more technically, to flesh it out, you'd probably have to start getting stuck down in technical language. Most people don't care. They're going to get bored. I feel like the last half of this book could have been changed out with different examples and different little insights. And to be honest, it'd almost be the same book. And another author could write the same first half of this book and then flesh out the last half with insights and stuff that they've had during their career, and it would probably be as useful to read the first time, but it would be worth reading again. It's quite odd. It's quite an oddly written book that's crudely cut into sections. And I think it's good. I think it rereads well. That's really all I think about the writing style and the summary. Like I was saying, this book is not hugely long or complicated. It really isn't. Like, if you read half of the book, you've got 90% of the point. There's just little things in the later parts. And a lot of the stuff I realized from the book wasn't even really written within it. It more triggered a thought of my own. And that's because it touches on so many things in such, like, low level of details, but it sums it up all nicely. Okay, so should you read it? Which I'm thinking I'm going to make the title of this video and possibly even the series. I might do a should you read series for short books, like Mark Antony's book, or the Seneca book, The Art of War, which would be a funny one to follow this up with. Should you read The Art of War? Like, what do you get out of it? Because his books are so short, I don't think everything lends well to being summarized, especially if it's non-fiction. It's like, You don't summarize like a huge instruction manual. You just have to read it, or it's there for reference. Or you're meant to read it and only really pay attention to the sections you like. So, should you read this? I think you should read this if you suffer from procrastination and you work in some kind of creative or self-directed field. I think that's like, you're a prime candidate for who this book was intended for. And you're the kind of person who could almost like add another chapter onto this book of stuff that you figured out from how to get past your blocks and the pitfalls and the traps of, you know, how your productivity basically fails. If you're the kind of person who punches in and punches out at work, your job's very secure, you don't do anything creative in your extra hobbies, because not everyone is creative, then maybe the book isn't as helpful. You might actually find something on one of those weird little half pages that he writes that's actually the interesting thing, and the rest of the book to you is kind of eh. I think because the book talks like a little bit about our subconscious and personifying it and how to overcome it and how it can trick us, I think the book would actually be helpful for like addiction recovery and like gym mentality and stuff like that. Because I imagine a huge section of it still applies. And pretty much what I said before, like this book, while it's not large, could provoke you into further research that you benefit quite a lot from, just because of some little passing thing that it says. Again, a lot of these little one-shot points, you might go, oh, what? And then you read the next page and the point's done and you're like, wait, what is that it? And then you have to go and look it up on your own, which I quite like. So yeah, I think you should read it. It's kind of self-helpy book. If you don't like those kind of books, you might not like this. I don't think it's more like a mentality book. And like, I don't know. It's hard to sum up actually. But it's like self-awareness mixed with overcoming creative blocks, how to foster like a good homework environment. During COVID, actually, this book is probably more helpful than it was when it was released. And then for the last section of the video, should I have read, and what did I get out of it? So yes, I felt it was worth reading. I found the book poked at enough of my little flaws, and I found some of my little habits and idiosyncrasies summed up, and I thought, oh, that applies to me. I've fallen for this kind of trick. You know, this is helpful. The biggest one that the book touched on that I think I'm guilty of is the talk about like not overdoing a venture when you first get into it. Like say you start doing gym, you go crazy for the first week, you burn out, then you have to stop, then the motivation stops, then you don't continue. Instead, you've got to kind of pull back a little. Don't wait before beginning, because from personal experience, sometimes you're waiting like, oh, we'll do this band thing, or we'll do this YouTube thing, and you're waiting on a person, and that person never really comes through, but you pause your plans for a whole year. And that's crazy. You should just like find a way to start, or do something equivalent, or put the energy in a different area, or like start attacking the thing that's stopping you immediately. Like if the thing you need to do takes less than 10 minutes, you could write it down on your list of stuff to do, or you could just do it. That was one I'm very guilty of, is making to-do lists and then doing something 3 days later and going, oh, I did my to-do list. It's like I could have done it straight away. And waiting before I could do things perfect and that sort of thing, rather than just like, no, I'm just going to do 2 hours worth. After 2 hours, I'll be burnt out. I'll just do 2 hours worth, and the next day I'll do 2 hours worth. And when you chip away at things, you kind of just win this war of attrition, which I think it's so nasty when attrition is used against us and our motivation, that it makes a lot of sense to use it back against the things that are stopping us. So if you're an artist and you're not the best at drawing backgrounds, you're good at drawing people. And you just sit there and you grind out like an hour of technical drawing every single day, every morning. A year later, you don't have that same limitation. You can start applying for jobs, or maybe you've been applying for jobs the whole time, but you actually start getting to interviews. Now you've got the next problem to deal with. And when I think about this YouTube channel, I have deleted and like scrapped way more videos than I've uploaded. And reading the book, now rereading it rather, I've kind of thought, he talks about not assuming what the audience wants and don't make what they want, because you're presuming they're so simple that you would know exactly what they want. Maybe I should have uploaded them, or at least most of them, and had the audience let me know whether or not they liked it or not, rather than giving into fear and scrapping them all, not doing anything. Because the audience isn't very harmed if I upload a video that's not that great, but if I upload one that's good, they might benefit quite a lot. You know, a couple of the videos are just objectively bad, but I've scrapped more than I've uploaded. So that's something I've reconsidered doing. I might just upload them, and then if everyone says, Terry, that sucks, I don't even think I'll take it down then. I might just go, oh good, like I thought so. Now I have a better idea of what good videos or what people are chasing. It's like, allow yourself to be corrected. Don't be so afraid of being corrected that you get stuck at the same level. You know, you reach for something, maybe not, you get you get the feedback, and then you can improve, or at least just not do that thing again. And I found myself, after reading the book, really thinking of creative endeavors and stuff that I've left unfinished. And some of these aren't really monetizable, so the whole be a professional spin in the book, I don't think I'm ever going to monetize it. But writing it as if that could happen, and then trying, and then being told to rack off, basically, even though it's going to take years to finish it, I doubt it would ever be worth the money, even if you got paid for it. An example would be like putting together a little guitar album or something. Okay, there's a billion of them. Why is yours going to be chosen? But clocking in and consistently doing it, you're going to get better. And so, yeah, the book really stirred up some thought in me, and it kind of gave me the idea of this series, the Should You Read thing. And I think it will be very good for books that I don't think I can summarize, that don't lend well to summarizing, or I don't completely understand, which is something that happens. Another weird thing that I thought of from the book, I might cut this and make a whole different video out of it, but hey, this can at least serve as the draft for the next video if it doesn't make the cut. When he talks about rituals, so he literally like makes the same cup of coffee, does it at the same time, starts writing, writes for the same amount of time, has cues of when he's done too much to stop. It's almost like a little ritual to get himself in the zone. And I started really thinking about the idea of cueing, and how much I do this without thinking, and had added things like this. And I observed powerlifters, of all things, using smelling salts. And I researched it, and they basically just agitate your respiratory system. They cause a shock to your lungs and all that. That's why you see them smell, and if you've fainted, like, they'll wake you back up. If you haven't fainted, they'll, like, it's like getting jump scared or something, you get a little adrenaline shot or something. But objectively, it doesn't really make you any stronger. It more just gets you fired up. And I realized what the powerlifters and strongmen and all that are doing. Every time they lift, they hit the smelling salt, it's this shock, and then they lift the heavy thing. They're getting themselves in the mindset and in the zone that they were in last time and the time before and the time before, to associate, okay, I get this shock, I'm wearing my powerlifting shoes, I do my lift. And it probably just helps them perform a little more consistently. Now, I don't have any data for that, but I think that's why they're doing it. And I found that scent is actually really powerful for this, and music and stuff like that is very good also. So I actually use, here, I'll show you guys. I use a diffuser, and then I literally have an oil that goes in there that's got some kind of citrusy focus, whatever stuff in there. And whenever I'm studying at university or doing something creative here, writing, drawing, music, whatever it is, I put this on. I've also got a big old hourglass, this thing. And this thing is so good to study or learn with, like say you're trying to learn French, whatever it is that you care about. The cool thing with this thing is, as opposed to a timer, this is a half-hour hourglass. So you go, okay, I'm going to do half an hour. If you're going to do an hour, flip it twice. I mean, it's not hard. You flip it. But what I found was, when I was doing my engineering study, and I got very good marks, is if you put a timer on, you'll be in a question, you're in the zone, beep, 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 it pulls you out. What this does is when you get to the end of a question or the end of an idea, you start thinking, oh man, I'm starting to get tired, you look for the timer. If the timer's gone and it's been 40 minutes instead of 30, you take a break, because the fact that you're looking at the timer means you want a break. If you don't look at it for an hour, good, you were in the zone for an hour, you didn't need the break. I found that this thing, mixed with the Scent Q, and I put on the same, shout out to the lo-fi hip-hop radio girl, who's always writing next to a window. I found that those things, yeah, they really do help pull you in the zone and stop you from getting distracted. You don't even think of going on Facebook, because you do these things and then you never go on Facebook. So your brain doesn't associate your study time with procrastinating as much. It helps. And that's something I learned from this book, and kind of even forgot where I'd gotten it from. I think this is where I got a lot of this from. Maybe I just realized it on my own, but yeah, if you cue yourself and you like study at the same time or things like that, it really helps. So I don't know if that'll make the video or if I'll cut that, and that can almost be its own little video, but hey, whatever. And yeah, that's all for today. I'll catch you guys in the next one. I think I'm going to do more of these little should you reads.